Live streaming is on.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Event Trader. We're keeping an eye out on this market, just watching us as we slip back down towards those session lows. Just watching the NASDAQ here, 17,480, and we just went through there. So hitting a new low on the NASDAQ, the S&P. That is, of course, been battling around that 49.80 area. We're seeing it losing that fight right now at the moment. Pop back up to 49.84 here just about 10 minutes ago. And now we got it dipping back down. Has not hit its session lows just yet, but certainly within striking distance of that 49.68 area that we saw earlier this morning. So I am going to be grabbing the charts from Jim here as we get into a discussion with, of course, Brandon Mars, options trader here, Brandon. So how are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How about yourself, Gavin?
I can't complain. Just getting back into the swing after the 3-day weekend and just kind of prepping for NVIDIA like everybody else. How about you?
Yeah, pretty much watching the video and just watching over a little sea of red in my watch list today.
Yes. Yeah, not much in the positive territory, that's for sure. I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's not on your list. Yeah, right. So did want to talk to you a little bit before we get into this week's Greek, which will be the deltas, of course, but wanted to chat with you a little bit about your market thoughts. I know it's been about 2 weeks since the last time we met, and at that point, everything was euphoric and we were rushing higher. Now we're certainly starting to see a bit of a rollover the last couple of sessions here. So I'd be kind of curious as to your market thoughts overall, and then we're going to break into NVIDIA and some of the other names. But starting with the markets, what are you looking at right now, Brandon?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't completely shocked to see a little selling coming into today. I have to admit, a little more aggressive than I personally would have anticipated. If DraftKings had an option to place bets on what NVIDIA would be down on Tuesday before earnings, I probably wouldn't have said 6%. I probably would have taken the under on that one. So, a little interesting just to see this much selling. I mean, I don't know.
AMD's down 6% too, right? So I mean, that whole space just getting hit.
Yeah, AMD. I mean, I'm looking at Tesla down almost 5. Some like Meta and Microsoft, not as bad, but yeah, there's definitely some solid selling out there. I didn't, I'm maybe a little bit on the conspiracy theory side of market makers. So when I see something like this before a big event like NVIDIA, I kind of get a little bit more intrigued, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody about that before too. It kind of feels like they're just trying to sucker people out of it. And then this thing, if they post another NVIDIA type quarter, could rip right now is kind of how I'm seeing things, just because it feels like a lot of people are leaning on the put side of the equation and just squeeze possible given a big round of results. So I mean, when you are looking at NVIDIA, what are some of the levels you're looking at here, Brandon? What are some of the price action that you're watching?
Yes, I mean, I have it front and center right now. I mean, I won't make a trade on it because again, it's earnings week, and I don't take any options trade. Rarely take options trades during earnings week. It does look like it's trying to find a base right now, right around the 680 area. You would think that with the move it would have and kind of sitting around the 680 area now for a couple of hours that it would have a chance to rip higher, but things are pretty heavy out there. Probably the next level, if it were to break down below that 680, I mean, you have the 20-day moving average just about 10 points away. So, not that far by any means. And, if we get some further pressure, I wouldn't be totally shocked to see it test that area. But, again, entering the week, if you had asked me if the 20-day was going to come into play before earnings, I probably would have said no, to be, again,
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, at the time, it seemed far enough away. Now, I was interested to see the implied volatility for NVIDIA running at 11%. Can you recall ever seeing a stock this large with an implied volatility? I mean, 11%, that's nearly 200 billion in market cap that's expected to run around in the after hours following those results. So, you got any thoughts on that? Have you ever seen a stock this large with a market cap this large see that much implied volatility?
When I put together my notes for this morning, where I also referenced NVIDIA and that implied volatility, I tried to think about it yesterday, actually, if I've ever seen a number quite that high. And no, nothing comes to mind right off the top of my head. I mean, it's definitely getting ready for some fireworks. I mean, sometimes something can be a dud, but just based upon options pricing, it's getting ready for a pretty big move, which would, in turn probably create some fireworks in the indexes too.
Where you see the most activity in the strikes for NVIDIA? Like, what are some levels? I know you mentioned the 20-day moving average at that 670 area. Is there any other volume that you're seeing out there that you're following that has you intrigued if it gets to a certain level, either up above or below?
It's actually pretty spread out. So when I look at my options chain, I have 30 strikes that show. That's just my default because I just don't want to see the strikes that are at $10 a share, just to kind of eliminate some of the noise for me. So right now I'm staring at 630 to 725, and it's pretty spread out. There's some decent call volume coming in on the 690 call, in the 700 call, but it's really kind of across the board, both put and call side, pretty even against the strikes. And while I have this in front of me, we had talked about implied volatility, and I mentioned it in my notes this morning that entering into the day, it was around 120% IV for this week's strike, and that's already up into like the 153, 155 range. So that's a pretty big number. I mean, a 690 call on NVIDIA is going to cost you $3,500 for one option. So just know your risk, I guess, going into that trade if you're going to take it.
All right. I mean, so NVIDIA obviously catching all the eyeballs, but there are a few other names out there that, could certainly move in reaction to this report. I just wanted to run through a couple of charts with you, Brandon, and see, because I know you don't have anything currently on the table. So I figured just as more of a stock specific look, we'll talk about some of these names. Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, this is down nearly 6% in junction with NVIDIA. I'd be curious if you had any thoughts on this chart and, areas that might grab your interest.
Yeah, I've mentioned NVIDIA a couple times the last couple weeks. It had that pennant pattern where it did a head fake and made a nice move, and now it's right back down through it. So, obviously up above it, the 20-day as I watch on everything, and it's also kind of the same area as like the 5 and the 10-day moving average. So, obviously the power of numbers, the more resistance and support type technical things that are at a level, the more potential for either a breakout or a breakdown. And I guess if NVIDIA swings and misses, and I'm not really saying that they're going to, but that 50-day right down there at like the 156 area, I mean, that's only 8 points away, and that's the move it made today. So I would imagine that it would act like a magnet and draw it into that area pretty quick with any pressure from NVIDIA.
Now, I know Microsoft is a name that you were looking at prior to this. So, obviously another AI play that's had a pretty big run there. Uh, number of verticals out there in addition, of course, with the cloud and all that, but name nonetheless, it's going to be on a lot of people's radar and sitting right on that 400 psych level. So you had mentioned the name earlier, and what's some of the price action you're kind of going to be looking at?
Yeah, if we could maybe throw up the weekly chart on this one actually. Um,
Yeah, not a problem.
yeah, I mean this one, obviously down 1% or so, would have been a good short or a good put. It would not have been the best one out there by any means. It would have been a little bit better return if you were to take a shot at a put on an AMD or a Tesla today. My hunch is that Microsoft's maybe getting a little bit of the blue chip Dow component that's maybe saving it a little bit today. If I had again, I didn't think it was going to be this aggressive a sell off. If I had thought that, I probably would have changed my tune on this. But I thought there were some interesting things from a technical learning perspective, and what caught my attention was on the weekly chart. So if you look at last week's candle, that is a tweezer top candlestick, which essentially means that the open of that week and the close, excuse me, of the week before are essentially at the same price level. And what tweezer tops show is that's potentially the highest point. So you've got that run up, like most of the tech stocks, it goes up and it hits about the 420.5 area, and then really last week that's where it opened and just in theory went down the whole week, because that's what the candle is. It's a near Marubozu candle. So essentially no wick at the top or the bottom. It's got the tweezer top, and then it's also a bearish engulfing. So it's got a couple of different technical things to it, and that's why I liked it. And I guess with anything in this market environment, betting against tech, obviously it's working out pretty well today. But always put a little bit of an asterisk and a little bit of a grain of salt on betting against a name like this. But that candlestick pattern definitely shows some signs of a potential top and a reversal. And I like tweezer tops because just from my trading, I've found them to be pretty reliable indicators when trading.
All right. So Microsoft obviously in focus. Let me ask you about Tesla, because I know NVIDIA is the second highest volume stock out there in terms of options. Tesla being the top one. A lot of people talking about dropping that out from the Magnificent Seven. I know you trade this one frequently. Did show some signs of life the last couple of weeks, though. That 185 level, which I believe you had pointed out post earnings. However, it did peter out at the 200 area. So if you're looking at Tesla, you got any thoughts on this chart?
Yeah, I feel like Tesla's been just kind of messing with me lately. It kind of was building that base around that 181 area, wasn't really participating in the market rally, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's up 6.5%. So, again, obviously, I mean, it is basically sitting on its 20-day as I'm speaking right now. I mean, it's like a couple cents off. So, that's obviously a crucial level. Like you said, it petered out around the 200 level, but it does have a gap to fill. And I'm a little surprised that it didn't get there, considering how close it got. And, again, just with market momentum, but, it's got that gap to fill from January 24th. And, at some point, I would imagine that it would go up and fill a gap like it always does. But, if it doesn't hold that 20-day and that big, ignition type candle from the 15th, it's almost close to the open of that. So anybody who hopped in on that day is now, underwater. So, that does give us the potential to, see some more selling pressure, I would say. And then, that base around 181, and it consolidated there for a while. If it doesn't hold that, I think you got another leg lower in Tesla. So again, I think if NVIDIA comes in and wipes out tech at all, this one probably would be pretty vulnerable.
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye out on that. Another name that you trade frequently, Meta Platforms, META, of course. To date, they have had arguably the best earnings report out there. I know it's another name that you trade frequently. It's been holding that island ever since it posted earnings. So one of the more impressive charts I've seen, especially given some of the selling pressure we've seen in the other chart names. I pointed out the obvious, I guess, that 455 area or so, Brandon. That's the level you're watching. That's the post earnings low.
Yeah, that island, just like you said, and if it were to crack that in the 450 again, that 20-day would come into play. Like you said, this chart's pretty impressive, and I mean, even today, I mean, being down 1% with the market doing what it's doing, and after the run it's had, is pretty impressive. And that report was solid, and the share repurchase program and dividend and all that. I would imagine the strength remains here. If NVIDIA does come in and puts pressure on the market, something like Meta would probably be an area that I would lean for looking at calls for any sort of, reversal on the move down.
Okay, so Meta near the top of your list. Real quick while we're chatting here, quant trader, Fibonacci trader, he is out with a long in Vincerix Pharma, ticker symbol VINC. Looks like he sees a little flag pattern breaking out here. Brandon, quick thoughts on that chart?
Did you say VINC?
VINC, Vincerix Pharma. He's always finding interesting names that I've never really heard of. That's for sure.
Yeah, it looks like it's breaking out of that little consolidation there around the 180 area. You'd think that the 2 level would be in sight here. First time I've ever looked at this, and my specialty is not these stocks. He's
no, I know.
I am not.
But that's sometimes the nice thing about a chart, right? A chart's a chart, no matter which way you're looking at it.
This is true. This is very true. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's got some volume coming in, showing some strength today on a weekday, and you'd imagine that the 2 level would be in its sights here sooner rather than later.
Yep. I'll refrain from asking you to break down the next phase data of their oncology drugs there. Save you that one there, Brandon.
Yeah, I definitely got my doctorate in college.
Let's see. Apple, that's another one that we'll be watching here. This thing's been slipping lower here. Looks kind of sickly at the moment. But, obviously with NVIDIA, a lot of people will be turning their focus to those mega cap tech names, and Apple sitting just in front of NVIDIA. They're at number 2 on the list. I think Microsoft's still number 1. But Apple here, not a great looking chart, Brandon. What do you think of it?
Yeah, Apple gave me a little bit of a hard time last week. It entered into a trade. It ended up working out for a nice double, but I saw some activity on it in the morning and jumped in, and then it kind of just traded flat all day, which later learned was probably being suppressed because there was a Bloomberg article that came out. So ended up making it a great trade, but it came out 10 minutes before the close, and I was sitting there trying to get the alert out and get out of the trade and figure out what was going on. And I was just like, you really could have just thrown that out at 3:30 as opposed to 3:50. But, a win's a win, I guess. Yeah, like you said, though, I mean, Apple is just not a pretty looking chart in this environment. Even after that news, and again, I didn't go and look and see how earth-shattering this new AI tool was going to be. Saw a nice spike, and even the next day, it was already back in the red. So, didn't give it a much boost there. And we're coming in. Let's see here. It looks like we're about to test the 180 area for the 4th time since the beginning of the year. So, again, I would imagine if NVIDIA comes in, that 180 area is vulnerable under any sort of pressure, because I mean it is now below every single major moving average and just hasn't participated in this rally basically at all. And even AI news is not giving it the boost it needs. So yeah, that would probably remain on my put radar.
All right. So there's some of the larger names out there. Any names that I missed, Brandon, that you'd be interested in just highlighting? on that mega cap tech space?
Yeah, I don't know if this technically falls in the magnificent. Well, I know it doesn't fall in the Magnificent Seven, but I guess Adobe would be one that I am watching. I mentioned this one in my notes. I haven't done anything on it. It actually would have been a setup that I love, but the market was just a little too under pressure for me to like the trade. But
What setup is that? Just tumbling down into a 200-day moving average for a bounce?
Yeah, sorry. That would help if
Yeah.
I mentioned what the setup was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
I love that setup too. I mean, especially when it's this far away from standard deviation, right?
yeah, so you've got the 2 big days down, and I mean it was heavy on Friday, that's for sure. But yeah, you get a good quality name like this. It's getting way outside of its Bollinger Band. It does a day 3 gap down. It's got that 200-day that you just mentioned. On day 3, and I talk about trading in the first 30 minutes a lot. If the market wasn't so under pressure and we got that gap down, that is a time that I do like to take a shot at some somewhat out of the money calls. So, in this case, it gapped down to 530. I probably would have looked at like the 550s. Which would have ended up actually making a nice trade at points in the day, because it has moved from like 530 to 540 a couple of times. So you probably would have done okay on those. But yeah, a day 3 gap down on a quality name in a strong market environment. And again, if the indexes weren't down 1%, this probably would have been something that I would have wanted to jump on. But I just think it's probably due for a little bit of an oversold bounce. But I will say, when I was watching it on Friday, it was quite heavy. The sellers were definitely out there, that's for sure. So take caution with that idea.
All right. So just kind of keeping an eye out here on the broader markets as we're chatting away too. A key moment for the indices here, Brandon, as far as I see it, trying to get back above that 49.80 level here in the S&P. NASDAQ also trying to work its way back above that 17,500 level. And what would you be looking at here, Brandon, if you're looking to trade one of these indices in terms of, is there anything that you would prefer to see if you're looking for a short, or anything you prefer to see if you're looking for a long? What kind of price action would you want?
Yeah, so what's kind of catching my attention right now, again, I have all my typical traders up, all the names that we just talked about, and looking at something like NVIDIA. NVIDIA right now is just made a move from 680 to 687 in just the last 10 15 minutes. So that base that I mentioned at the beginning of the call, and again, they, especially with earnings, they could rip this thing right back down in 2 seconds. But it's showing some signs of life. Its Bollinger Bands on the intraday chart are really close, and again, that would indicate that a potential move is coming. We've got some green going on there. We've got Microsoft that's now 50 cents off the 400 level. So just kind of seeing it across the board is what gets me interested. And then also on the indexes, I mean, we did maybe put in a higher low there around 130ish. So if that can keep, and looking at the NASDAQ in particular, I'm on the 5-minute, but that big red candle at 125, that's now all just about been consumed as it ticks up just now. So, you've got a block of potential shorts and sellers that, you might have some of that FOMO and some covering. And I would say maybe some of the people that jumped in on that candle could have potential to be, some weaker shorts at this point. So yeah, I think some momentum in some of the names and a few of the things on the indexes, I'd maybe lean, short-term bullish here.
Okay, there you have it. And we are slowly pushing up to that 1730 level. So keeping an eye out. Definitely, like Brandon said, we're at a point in the afternoon where this could easily rip either direction. Just about 2 hours left in the trading session. All right, Brandon. Any other names that we need to touch upon that are on your radar?
No, I think even just NVIDIA alone with the fireworks that could provide would provide some entertainment. So I think we've covered it, and I'll keep an eye on some things here as I've got one eye on the charts and one eye on the presentation. And if anything catches my eye, we'll circle back.
All right. Well, then we will move into this week's options discussion, and we are going to continue with the Greeks. You did theta 2 weeks ago. For anybody that might have missed that, if you do a search under Audio X, it should pop up there, the replay of it. But for today, we are going to talk a little bit about the deltas, Brandon. So you want to just kind of break that down for people and how you use it in your trading.
Yes, so delta is just an estimate of how much an options premium may change given a dollar move in the underlying. So I remember when I learned delta, so I actually used to own a business, and I used to consult with asset managers, and I would help them raise capital because that was what my background was before trading. And I actually had a client that had a hedge fund strategy where they wrote options on futures. If you you really want to be kept up at night with corn and gold prices swinging at 3 a.m., that's the way to go. And basically what they taught me about delta, just simplifying it, is, I just gave you the technical definition of it, but the easiest way to think about delta is it shows the probability of an option expiring in the money. So for example, if you have a delta of 0.40, that means the options price will theoretically move 40 cents for every dollar change in the price of the underlying stock. But again, going back to simplify this, the easiest way to think about it is something with a 0.40 delta means that at that moment, all else aside, the option has a 40% chance of expiring in the money. And again, I say all else aside because, you've got things like NVIDIA we're talking about, and, who knows, maybe we get a short squeeze this afternoon. So, there's a lot of factors that are changing the price at a rapid pace. So, but again, just delta is the percentage of expiring in the money.
Do you have a level where you're just like won't even look at a stock or one of those strike prices? Like if it's below 0.3, is that just off the table for you then?
For me, not necessarily. Again, I kind of pick my strikes based upon the technical stuff, the moving averages, rules of whatever, maybe flag or triangle pattern that I might be looking at. If we're talking about that, the 0.5 is where you would indicate that an option is currently at the money. I think 0.3 can actually create some intriguing plays because you're going out of the money enough where if you hit and again, because I'm trading breakouts or trying to anyway, if you're hitting something that's going to make this really quick move, I actually think a 0.3 area is kind of intriguing because you're going to be kind of far enough out of the money where you're going to get a better return than the at the money strike, but you're not, so far away that it's not going to work for you. And, again, you need to take into consideration, the time of the week. A 0.3 option this afternoon, if you're playing a breakout, is a lot different than something at 2:00 on a Friday. I think when you start getting to that, 0.1, 0.2 level, you got to kind of be saying to yourself, am I just trying to hit a home run with out of the money options here?
All right. So just keeping an eye out too on headlines as they cross here. I know some cities got a few, so just keeping an eye out. They're noting that credit card losses are expected to continue to normalize. Expects losses to trend up. I don't think that's anything surprising, but certainly keeping an eye out on things here as we see a little bit of a rollback over here after we got up to 17,532. Then we're down about 13 points from that. So just kind of keep an eye out on that front. So, all right. So that's some of the baselines that you have when you're just going in and looking at the delta. But what are some of the things you're looking at if you for some of the higher delta or lower delta pieces? Like, what are some of the stock attributes that would need to be involved?
Yeah, I mean, as far as a stock attribute, again, for me, I'm always, starting with the chart, and I'm always looking for something that's going to make a move. So, if you're looking at, I don't know, let's say that you're, trying to make you just a basic, trade on like an Apple that might be a little bit, kind of slower. A stock attribute there, I might look maybe towards the more the 0.5 delta, more of a at the money type situation, some sort of consolidation day like this. Again, I might keep it a little bit closer. If a stock is really looking like it's coiled up and it's ready to go, that's where I would start to look, maybe a little bit further away. So, yeah, again, it kind of all depends on, what are the indexes doing? What are the stocks doing? Are we going to sit here just chop with NVIDIA, and maybe we should, bring in our delta a little bit to be a little bit closer to the money? Or are we going to get one of those big trend days where everything under the sun is going to be up 3%, and, maybe we, take ourselves a little bit further out and take on a little bit more risk for more return?
All right, no, that makes sense. Let me ask you, Brandon. I mean, so we talked about theta 2 weeks ago. Obviously, just kind of watching other things playing out here. Do you put together a checklist for everything that when you're going through and you're just like, okay, delta's here, theta's there? How do you approach using all these different instruments to make sure you kind of you don't forget about them, and that you're incorporating everything into your trading style?
Yeah, so I have all those. I use Thinkorswim, and Thinkorswim gives you a pretty good option where you can just customize what your option chain looks like. So, mine has volume, open interest, implied volatility, theta, delta in the bid ask, and the strike. That's what I use. There are other deltas, there are other Greeks that are out there. I personally think that theta and delta are probably the two most basic that you'd be wanting to look at, especially if you're just learning how to trade options. So I just have those sitting there, right in front of me. And, I was just kind of talking about the numbers, I don't know, we were just talking about Tesla here. Okay, the 220 strike on the call side, it's got 17,000 options traded today. That might catch your attention from a volume perspective. And well, let's look over. It's got a delta of 0.02. Well, again, I might not sit here all day long and calculate the delta just because, you got to make the move, especially if you see a triangle or flag pattern setting up intraday. But maybe that tells myself if I'm going to go into the 220, maybe I should lighten up that position because my odds are a little lower. And maybe I should consider, coming in on my strike a little bit. So again, I don't think you have to sit here with some of these concepts and just, sit there and run calculations all day long. But when you see a basic thing like 0.02, it's like, well, that 10-cent option on Tesla, that's the 220 strike, might seem intriguing. But I also got to tell myself it's got a pretty low probability of working out.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, I'm just kind of keeping an eye out on the markets here. We're chopping around. Where would you put delta in terms of the importance in your trading?
For me, I probably focus on the Greeks a little bit less than others. I think if you're building out a portfolio of options and you're going out, 30 days, a year, I think that delta and theta are probably the two to focus on. Again, especially if you're just learning how to trade options. But for me, again, it's all about the chart for me, because if Tesla's sitting there and it has some intraday formation and it's about to break out, I'm not necessarily going to shy away from a trade because it has a certain delta or a theta, because I might only be in that thing for an hour's time. And usually when I have some sort of pattern that's forming like that, a triangle, you just measure the top to the bottom and that will give you your target range. I kind of have that picked out already. So, if all of a sudden I'm looking at it and I see the delta's really low like that, and that was my strike that I was planning on going with, I'd probably bring it in. But even for me, like if I'm looking at Tesla today, I'm probably not looking anywhere above the 200 strike, just personally. So that kind of also helps eliminate a little bit of that risk for me. And again, if you're seeing something on the daily chart and you're like, wow, Tesla is just gonna, they're going on a run here, then I might look differently. But for me today, I'm not even looking at anything over 200. And then you're already automatically putting yourself in a delta range of, 0.2 and higher.
That makes sense. Let's see, what else on the deltas that we haven't talked about here, Brandon, that you want to mention?
Let's see here. So
I feel like we've touched upon most of the main points in your notes.
Let me just go back through here. Yeah, we kind of went in and out here of these things. So again, you want to know this info, if you're a call buyer, because you want to see what your odds are of this ending in the money. And then on the flip side, this would be important if you're a put, if you're writing puts, and that's what the strategy was with my client. And that's really where I learned delta, was they were looking at deltas. They were looking at lower deltas because they wanted the options to expire worthless and keep that premium. And again, that's what you would, for the most part, want if you're looking at an options writing strategy. And actually, on that note, calls have a delta that range between 0 to 1, and the puts range from -1 to 0. Again, that just goes back to the whole, you want them to work out if you're a call buyer, and you don't want them to work out if you're writing the puts.
That's an interesting aspect of it, Brandon, though, because they're writing stuff that they're hoping you're going to kind of take, right? I mean, so they're trying to write crap just to make the money on it. So from that perspective, how do you look at some of the write-ups for somebody's underwriting some of these options? What how does that impact you, knowing the other side of that equation as a buyer, as a trader?
Are you saying that Wall Street dangles options out there that may just have zero shot of ever coming
I'm
to
just
fruition?
inferring stuff from your commentary, Brandon. I'm not implying anything, but it is a business, I suppose, and just from your talking about it, your client interaction, it's obviously from the retail side that we're on here. It's something that you want to be aware of and kind of get an understanding of it when you're looking and shopping through the different options.
Yeah, and I mean, a time like now with NVIDIA is a perfect example. I mean, those market makers with that premium hitting 150%, they are writing contracts as much as they can right now, and that's where they make their money, and that's where people get burned sometimes on earnings reports, because you need such a huge move, and they have, I don't know, maybe become good at pinning stock prices to a point where a large amount of options expire worthless. So, I think it also just kind of comes down, put all the Greeks aside, I think when you're just looking at it, I mean, we were just talking about Tesla, the 220 call. I think you just don't even look at the Greeks for a second. Ask yourself, like, do I really think that Tesla's going to be at, 220 by the end of the week? So, just kind of looking at the charts. And again, you're going to go into some of these sometimes, and Tesla's going to come out with news, and it's going to go to 230, and you're going to hit a home run. You could be like, "Oh man, I'm glad I didn't listen to that options trader," and that happens. But I think it's all just knowing your risk, right? Like if you're saying to yourself right now, "All right, I think that Tesla's going to be a big winner this week. I think NVIDIA is going to come out and say they've been selling auto chips like crazy, and I think Tesla's the buyer." I want to take a shot at it. Just know that what your risk and what your reward is there, and just kind of know your probabilities. I think it just really hurts us when we go into a trade and we're like, oh my God, this Tesla option's 10 cents. It's going to be, $10 by the end of the week, and it doesn't work out, and we just lose a bunch of money. But if you willingly go into a trade knowing that, hey, this doesn't have much of a shot, but if it does, it's going to work out well. So, I think it's just kind of some common sense type things, and taking a step back and looking at the overall picture. But yeah, if you get a huge amount of volume on the Tesla 300 calls, just, know that some market maker's probably going to have a good weekend when those expire worthless.
All right. Speaking of making some nice money here, Vincerix Pharma. Look at that, Brandon. You talked about it seemed likely it was going to hit the 2. I don't know if this is us chatting about it or just Fibonacci trader in general, but that thing's getting some big volume and really getting onto some momentum traders lists here as that rips over that 2 level there. Quant trader did take, or Fibonacci trader did take third off there with that nice move into the money, up about 17.68% on the day here for VINC. So, all right, Brandon, anything else on the Delta Greeks that we need to know about?
Did I say 2 on VINC? I think I said 220, right? On the penny. But yeah, no, that's
yeah, no, you said it was going to rip up to 2. I'll give you that. I don't know if you said 220 though. But what's 20 cents among friends, right?
That is a nice little rip higher. So nice win there for
heavy volume too.
Yeah, I just noticed that actually. So nice win there, and hopefully some subs got on board with that one too. So yeah, I think there's just a couple more things here on my list, and I think we'll be good to go. So
one quick thing I just want to highlight, Brandon, real fast is we are seeing equities slipping lower now. It got up to that 49.84 area, failed to get above, and then just has kind of been reversing back. So we're back to 49.77 here in the S&P. So go on.
Yeah, so Delta will increase and approach 1 as a call option gets deeper in the money. So, basically, we've talked about this concept before. It's going to trade more like a stock, the actual stock price, and it's just going to have a high chance of expiring in the money. And on the flip side, an out of the money call will start to approach 0 as you get closer to expiration, because it just has little chance of ending in the money. And then the only other thing, I'll just mention it on this call, is you might have heard of delta hedging. I'm going to keep that as a separate discussion for another presentation, but just figured since we're on the topic, I'll briefly mention it. It's basically just going long or short shares to hedge the delta in your options. So a little bit more to that. I just wanted to at least make sure that people were aware of it, because you've probably heard of it before as we get closer to some of these options expirations, and you hear about the big firms and their delta hedging.
All right, so that's what we call a tease in the industry.
I got to make sure I have some ideas in my back pocket. So I was like, you know what? Let's save that one.
I hear you. So, all right. So delta hedging will be up in one of our upcoming discussions. Speaking of up, Vincerix Pharma. This looks like it's going to crazy right now, Brandon. It's up to 220 area. Again, some volume coming in. Expecting to see this probably on the runners list tomorrow here. So definitely keep an eye out on that one, as there's obviously a lot of eyeballs looking for some place to park some money late on in the trading session here. So, all right, Brandon, anything else that we didn't touch upon for Delta?
No, I think that's it. I'll just close, again, kind of what I said before. I think just using Delta is kind of a good way to just keep yourself in check a little bit on your risks that you're taking with options. Again, if you're starting out with options and you want to do a real basic trade, doing a Delta kind of at the money, the 0.5 area, I think is probably a safer way to dip your toe in the water. And as much as we want to go buy the new yacht by buying some options that cost us a penny, just to keep in mind that Delta is probably going to be pretty low, and just know that risk return before you go into the trade. So again, just another tool to just kind of protect ourselves in the chaotic options world.
All right, real quick, few feedback questions here, Brandon. Home Depot, somebody asked you if you felt that this was a short based on the chart.
Home Depot, one of my favorite non-secret traders that I have. For my full disclosure, I have not seen anything from that report yet. I haven't had a chance to take a look. Gavin, you know all this, so was it? It was decent.
It was a little shaky. Conservative on the outlook, not surprising there, but they're running into issues with these higher rates. Obviously, it's been a slowdown in new home purchases, and then a lot of people that did the upgrades to their homes, they've kind of worked through that cycle. So it's on tough comps. So I would say a subpar earnings report and outlook in total.
Okay, thank you. It's an interesting chart. I mean, you've got that dip down below the 20-day that happened today. Kind of found some support where you also found support from those two long wicks from the 13th and the 14th. And then all of a sudden, it's like this almost near Marubozu candle that engulfs the last 4 days. I don't know if I have if you're just looking at the candle today and what it's done to the last 4 days, it's kind of looking bullish, but I don't know. It almost feels like that's maybe a head fake.
Yeah, given the results, I'm kind of impressed to see this even in positive territory at the moment. When you couple in the market too.
And if we're talking here, this is one of the things that I look at on a daily basis, actually. So I'll try to be brief here as a quick learning tool again. It has a divergence on the RSI that's really dating back until mid-December. If you look at the MACD on the daily chart, the histogram is basically been in the red since December, and it's got a downward sloping line, yet it's been kind of climbing up. So, in a market environment like this, divergences can go on seemingly forever. But those are two pretty major divergences on the RSI. And then it almost looks like, and this might not be textbook and not fully to fruition, but it almost looks like it's forming an ascending wedge on the daily chart, which would be a bearish pattern. So, would I want to jump in and, bet the farm on a short on this today? No. Would I keep it on my short radar? Absolutely. I think it just shows a lot of technical things. I guess the one thing that maybe makes me hesitate with that is a not so great earnings report. It is up on a weak market day, so it's got some strength. I guess the question is let's watch it over the next couple days and see if it's a head fake. And if it is a head fake, I think you just got some new longs in there, and I think you could see a pretty quick reversal if it is.
All right, so Home Depot on the radar. One other question for you, Brandon. Do you ever buy or sell options with the intent of getting them exercised to get a position?
No, not really. The only time that I've really done that in the past is I had some positions in stocks that I thought their run was over and I was interested in exiting them. So to just juice my returns a little bit, I wrote a call that was at the money to collect a little extra premium, and then my shares were called away from me, which is what I wanted. Um, and that's about it. The only other time I've been assigned was when I was a new trader, and I got about $350,000 worth of Beyond Meat shares, which I did not need or want.
Yeah, hopefully you got that on the way up and not on the way down.
Oh, that was not a fun weekend.
No, no. You're just going out pumping Beyond Meat to everybody that would listen for the weekend.
I bought so many Beyond sausages and just went to every barbecue I could find.
So out of curiosity, is there a reason why you don't do that, or you just don't want you don't want to have that much pressure on? Basically, you're stuck in a position that you're not necessarily excited about.
For me, it's really simple. I just don't own a lot of stock.
Yeah.
That's really all it comes down to. Obviously, and we've talked about this strategy before with some of the, like, what was it, cash secured puts and calls that we've talked about. Of going and writing those positions or those strikes at a lower price for an entry. I mean, it's a very good strategy if you're looking to own stock. I just personally own very, very little stock, and that's all it comes down to. But again, it's not a bad idea, and that's what people do all the time, and really one of the benefits of using options. And again, there's different ways to kind of tweak your entry and how you enter into it to juice your returns a little bit.
All right. Speaking of juice and returns, quant Fibonacci trader taking another piece of this Vincerix Pharma as this continues to just rip higher while we're chatting here. Brandon, up to $2.50 now.
Yeah, like we
All
said,
right.
250 on the target price on that.
250 on the target price. Soon we'll be saying 3. Very nice call by Fibonacci trader there. Nothing like jumping in and getting a 30% return in about 35 minutes of work, right? So
yeah, I gotta get on it this afternoon. He's showing me up here.
Everybody on the team shows me up on a daily basis. I know the feeling. But yeah, very nice call by him there. So all right, Brandon, anything else we've got going on today that you want to chat about with the deltas?
No, I think pretty solid session. I think we covered everything and got some good ideas out there. So I think we are good.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brandon, as per usual, thank you for joining us here. And we look forward to talking a little delta hedging coming up in the next few weeks.
All right. Thanks, Gavin. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody. We're just going to shut down audio temporarily here. I'll get up the recording on this as soon as possible. And we'll be back up and talking about the markets here in a couple minutes.